Um, have you ever tried to get a straight answer from a massive organization, only to be completely buried in paperwork?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's practically a universal experience, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So today we are exploring a situation where a citizen asks his local government a really simple question, and the government says the answer will cost $50,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So he walks into the building to ask why, and the government, well, they basically legally erase his visit from existence.
It sounds like the plot of a dystopian novel, right?
Yeah.
But it is actually just a regular Tuesday at a local administrative office. I mean, we operate on this fundamental assumption that public records are, well, public.
Really should be.
Yeah, but the truth is the actual mechanics of retrieving those records, it can act as this massive invisible wall.
And exploring that wall,
Yeah.
that profound tension between the ideal of public transparency and the crushing reality of bureaucratic systems. That is our mission for today's deep dive.
Yeah, and we have some really fascinating sources to go through today.
We do. We have a highly specific, very heavily documented stack of sources. We're looking at a first-hand article published in the Maine Mirror. We've got multiple official public record response letters from Maine's Department of Health and Human Services, or DHHS. And we had this sprawling, multi-year email chain initiated by a Maine citizen named Ryan Michaels.
To set the mood for what you are about to hear, my mental backdrop today is it's like a towering, slightly chaotic wall of institutional filing cabinets, just overflowing manila folders everywhere.
Oh, that is the perfect visual.
Right, because as we navigate this, the central character isn't necessarily a person, it's the filing system itself.
Yeah, we are going to follow a single citizen's journey, and it starts with a really basic question submitted on paper about administrative appeals. But over the course of a few months, the simple inquiry, it mutates.
It really does.
Yeah, it escalates into a $50,000 invoice, physically disabled intercom systems, and the totally bizarre scenario of a citizen having to legally request proof of his own physical existence inside a state building.
It is a profound case study, honestly, in how large organizations manage information and, by extension, how they manage the actual citizens requesting that information.
Absolutely. So we'll start at the genesis of this conflict, right? Before things escalated to physical confrontations at front desks, it began entirely on paper.
Right, just a standard request.
Exactly. Michael submitted what is known as a Freedom of Access Act request, or a FOAA request. He simply wanted to know why Maine's Office of Child and Family Services was placing investigative appeals on administrative hold, while at the same time prioritizing a different type of appeal, known as Maine Care appeals.
On its face, I mean, this is a very standard civic inquiry. He just wants to know the rationale behind a workflow decision that obviously affects families.
Right.
He wants to know if there are internal memos or emails explaining this, reprioritization. And the initial response he gets, it actually reflects a system working exactly as designed.
Yeah, it sounded great at first.
Exactly. The department estimated this request would take about 4 weeks to process, and the cost to the citizen would be exactly $0.
4 weeks. $0. You file the paperwork, you wait a month, you get your answer. Easy. Right.
You would think so.
But then the deadline comes, and it goes. Months pass. And when the department finally does respond, the estimate has mutated.
Aw.
Suddenly, they say, well, it's going to take 20 staff hours and require a $450 fee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Michaels requests a fee waiver, which is just outright denied.
So the department's justification here is that they found additional potentially responsive records during their initial sweep. They basically broaden the scope.
Right.
Which immediately shifts the financial burden onto the citizen requesting the information.
But the true shock, it comes when he files a second, broader request.
Yeah.
This one involves internal communications and records relating specifically to himself.
Okay.
The department comes back and states they have identified 15,282 potentially responsive emails. And the new bill they hand in,
This is the crazy part.
$50,875. They estimate will require over 2,000 staff hours of labor and impose a 9 to 12-month delay.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah, and ultimately, because Michaels couldn't casually write a check for 50 grand, the requests were administratively abandoned. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
It's like ordering a free glass of tap water at a restaurant. You wait an hour, and then the waiter hands you a bill for $50,000 because they decided you need to pay for the building's entire plumbing infrastructure.
That is exactly what it feels like.
Well, wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Isn't it entirely reasonable that a state agency, doesn't have the taxpayer funding or the manpower to just spend 2,000 hours doing free research for one guy? Is this a deliberate financial wall built to keep citizens out, like the article implies? Or is this just the tragic reality of an outdated government email system that literally cannot handle keyword searches without melting down?
That is the core administrative argument, yes. The state agencies, they are not sitting on giant surpluses of free time.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand how a public records request turns into a $50,000 invoice, we really have to look at the mechanics of e-discovery and data privacy.
Okay.
Because it isn't just a matter of someone typing a keyword into an email server and hitting print.
Right, because if it were just a search function, it would take like 5 seconds.
Exactly. When an agency says a search will take 2,000 hours, they are billing the citizen for the labor of legal review. Within the Department of Health and Human Services, you are dealing with massive amounts of sensitive data.
Oh, right, like medical records.
Yes, you have HIPAA constraints, medical histories, child welfare reports. Every single one of those 15,000 emails has to be manually read by a staff member or an attorney to ensure no protected, personally identifiable information is released.
Oh, wow. So it's like asking a librarian for a specific book. But because the book might contain state secrets, they have to charge you for the time it takes, a team of lawyers, to read every single page with a black marker before they can finally hand it to you.
That is the perfect analogy. The redaction process is just incredibly labor intensive. And, we have to confront the structural reality of these transparency laws.
Yeah.
On paper, freedom of information laws are designed to grant you access. But in practice, data volume and review time are structural bottlenecks. The chilling effect is undeniable.
Definitely.
When a fundamental democratic right, the right to know how your government operates, when that costs more than the average citizen's annual salary, transparency basically ceases to be a right. It becomes a luxury good.
Which is exactly the sentiment expressed in the Maine Mirror article. The laws exist to reduce uncertainty, but here, the mutating estimates and the 5-figure invoices, they just created an impenetrable wall.
Right.
So if the digital door is locked behind a $50,000 paywall, what is a citizen's last remaining option?
You show up in person.
Exactly. You force a physical interaction, you bypass the servers, walk into the building, and demand an answer face-to-face.
It is a really fascinating tactical adaptation. Michaels basically decides, well, if I cannot afford to see the internal emails, I will at least secure a record proving that I walked into your building and handed you a piece of paper.
But this pivot, it leads to an outright breakdown in basic human communication.
Yeah, it gets messy.
I am reading through the events of October 24, 2025. Michaels visits the local department office in Biddeford, Maine. He's there to hand-deliver a document he titled a Public Record Accountability Visit Statement.
Okay.
And he's just seeking clarification on an event from earlier in the year, March 11. Because for a month, he has been sending emails to a specific contact he was directed to, a woman named Julie, or Jill Hunter. And he has received zero response.
Right, so he just shows up in person.
Exactly, seeking clarification. But according to the emails he later sent out, complete with linked body camera footage, the physical interaction goes very poorly.
It sounds like a total shutdown.
A total shutdown. The office manager refuses to accept the document. She literally slides the paper back through the glass service window. She verbally declines to speak to him. And then she reaches over and physically disables the speaker system. She just turns the intercom off.
Oh, wow. She just cut off communication entirely.
Entirely. So in response, Michaels basically becomes his own archivist.
Yeah.
He takes out a pen and writes a detailed note directly onto the document. I'm looking at a scan of it right now.
What does it say?
It says, Biddeford DHHS building manager refused to sign. I, Ryan Michaels, delivered an exact copy of this paper around 1:39 p.m. on 10/24/25.
He signs it, right?
He signs it. And because he captured the entire interaction on a body camera, he then emails all of this evidence to a massive list of state officials.
Right, trying to create that paper trail.
Exactly. He copies the governor, the attorney general, local police departments, and various oversight committees. And here's where it gets really interesting. If you or I go to the DMV, we assume there's a record, right?
Yeah.
We pulled a ticket from the kiosk, our number was called, we stood in line, the system tracked us. But he is essentially wearing a body camera, just to prove he physically exists inside that building.
It's intense.
Isn't this level of documentation a bit excessive? Or is this extreme adaptation exactly what you have to do when a system actively ignores you?
What's fascinating here is how completely the burden of proof has shifted. The citizen is no longer just asking to view existing government records.
Right.
They're being forced to manufacture a bulletproof chain of custody just to prove an interaction occurred in physical space. And, we have to add a critical layer of context here regarding the intercom system.
Oh, right. Because in his emails, Michaels explicitly notes that he is a federally adjudicated disabled individual.
Yes, and he frames the disabling of the communication equipment not just as poor customer service, but as a denial of ADA-compliant communication.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, if you are standing on one side of thick security glass, that intercom is not a luxury. It is your only lifeline to the services inside.
Exactly.
So when an employee switches that intercom off, they are severing a disabled citizen's ability to seek clarification or really due process. It elevates from an administrative annoyance to a potential civil rights issue.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So he doesn't trust the system to document his presence, so he creates his own immutable digital and physical record.
And it is an ironclad paper trail. I mean, we have the written note with the timestamp.
Yeah.
We have the mass email sent that exact same afternoon to the state's highest officials. We have the YouTube link to the body camera footage. It is comprehensively, undeniably documented, which honestly sets the stage for what I think is the most baffling part of this entire deep dive.
The official response.
The official response.
Right.
So Michaels has this absolute mountain of proof, and he files new public record requests asking for the official agency records of those physical visits.
Right. He wants to see what they have on their end.
Yeah, he wants the visitor logs, the security footage, the hand-delivered document receipts. And the following May 2026, the official responses finally arrive. These are request numbers 1895, 1897, and 1901.
Okay.
And the government's version of reality completely, utterly contradicts the undeniable evidence.
They really do. If you look closely at the language in those official responses from DHHS and the Division of Support Enforcement and Recovery, or DSER, the language is identical across the board.
Yes. Regarding the visitor logs, hand-delivered documents, and audio recordings for October 24, 2025, the official state response is literally 2 words. No records.
Quest, no record.
No records. And it wasn't just an anomaly for that single day. They claimed no records or no recordings for over a dozen specific dates that Michaels inquired about.
Wow.
But then, and this is so bizarre, they did find a record for a different visit.
Oh.
On March 10, 2026, the system successfully generated an electronic case note detailing Michaels dropping off child support appeal paperwork at the Sanford office.
So the system works.
It works. It explicitly notes he asked for a mandated reporter and that the Sanford police were called while he waited in the lobby.
Right. So we know the database is perfectly capable of logging a visit. It is capable of logging a hand-delivered document. But for October 24th, 2025, it claims a total historical vacuum.
So what does this all mean? I have to push back hard on this paradox.
Let's hear it.
How can the state legally claim there are no records of October 24 when there is literally an email sitting in the governor's inbox from that exact day with a video attached proving he was standing at the window?
Yeah.
Are they calling him a liar? Or is the bureaucracy so deeply siloed that the left hand genuinely cannot see the body camera footage the right hand is holding?
This raises an important question about the hyper-literal nature of legal compliance and really how government software is architected. They aren't necessarily calling him a liar.
Okay.
To understand this, we have to look at the May 18th response letter. The staff attorney specifically states that they only search the child support program records.
Oh, wait. And there is a legal distinction there, right?
Yeah.
Between a broad public records request and a party records request.
A massive distinction. General freedom of access laws are sunshine laws, right? They're designed for the general public to view government operations.
Right.
But child support records are highly confidential. They are specifically accepted from general public disclosure under federal and state statutes.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the department provided these specific files to Michaels, not under a general public request, but because he is a legally recognized party to the specific child support case. They treated his inquiry as a party records request to expedite it through their specific division.
Okay, so they are looking through a very narrow, highly secure lens.
Precisely. They are looking exclusively inside their specific closed-loop software system. Now, think about the physical mechanics of that October visit.
Okay.
Michaels walks in. He tries to hand a document to the receptionist. The receptionist refuses it, slides the paper back, and turns off the intercom. Now, in the physical world, an interaction undoubtedly occurred.
We know it did. We literally have the video.
But in the bureaucratic world, the bureaucracy operates strictly on what is cataloged. If the receptionist refuses to accept the paper, it never gets scanned.
Oh, wow.
Right. If it never gets scanned, it never enters the child support electronic database. If no one types up an incident report, there is no text file created.
Right.
Therefore, when the public access officer runs a search query in that specific database months later, the algorithm accurately reports no records exist.
Wow. So the system isn't maliciously deleting files, it's just revealing this terrifying loophole where physical reality is entirely erased if the intake mechanism simply refuses to function.
Exactly, and the silos compound this erasure. An email with a YouTube link sent to the governor's office or the attorney general does not automatically populate into a local Biddeford child support visitor log.
Because they're completely different systems.
Right, they run on entirely different servers. So the specific division searches its specific silo, finds nothing scanned for that date, and legally, factually, from their restricted vantage point says, no records.
That is just wild. Meanwhile, Michaels is staring at an email chain with half the state government on copy, holding a piece of paper with his own timestamp, screaming into the void, but I was there.
Yeah, it's Kafkaesque.
And in his June 25th follow-up email, he even asks them point blank. He says, why were records apparently retained for some routine document deliveries, but not others?
A very valid question.
The March visit where the police were called, that generated a record because an employee sat down and typed up an incident report. But the October visit generated nothing because the employee slid the paper back. He points out that from a citizen's perspective, there are no silos.
Right.
You walk into a state building, you go to a front desk, you don't know the internal routing protocols, and frankly, you shouldn't have to.
Exactly. The friction between the citizen's lived experience and the state's archived reality is exactly what makes this deep dive so critical. The citizen is demanding that the government recognize a shared physical reality. And the government is responding with rigid, algorithmic database outputs. If the intake clerk doesn't scan it, it never happened.
Which really connects this hyper-local struggle in Maine to something much broader, something that I think you, listening right now, can easily relate to in your own life.
Absolutely.
This isn't just about one man's child support appeal or a frustrating argument with a front desk manager over an intercom system. It perfectly illustrates that phrase used in the source material. Transparency delayed can become transparency denied.
It forces us to examine the actual mechanics of our rights. You can have a legally guaranteed right to access information. You can have laws written explicitly to guarantee sunshine on government operations.
Right.
But if the administrative toll to access that information is set at an arbitrary $50,000 and 2,000 hours of labor, that right is functionally void.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if you bypass the money, right, even if you show up in person with body camera, the system can simply refuse to catalog your existence. And if you aren't cataloged, you just don't exist in the historical record.
Which is exactly why his transition to becoming his own archivist is so poignant. He recognized that the official record was failing, that the intake mechanisms were broken. So he built his own parallel archive.
Yeah, he had to. Which leaves us with a final lingering thought that I really want you to mull over after this deep dive is done. We walk around blindly trusting our institutions to be the infallible, permanent record keepers of our society's history.
We do.
We assume the files in those cabinets are complete. But physical, recorded, face-to-face interaction with a government official can completely evaporate from the official archives simply because a clerk decides to slide a piece of paper back under a glass window who is actually writing our history.
That is the question.
Is it the objective truth of what happened in the room? Or is it just whatever the filing system decides to let inside?